Approximately 666,000 frontline workers are eligible to receive this check, and it will determine who receives the bonus payments. If all eligible workers apply, then each will receive approximately $750. If fewer workers apply, then the pot will be split among those applicants. The Minnesota Senate recently passed the Comprehensive Health and Human Services Reform Bill to address the state's long-term care and workforce issues. So folks, will President Biden do something for this? Folks, we have a ton of news about the Ford stimulus checks, Social Security benefits, SSI and SSDI. There's a huge deadline for millions of Americans, and officials have confirmed they need to take action to claim a one-time relief check. In roughly 2 months, the governor of Connecticut will send out nearly $170 million in tax rebates and other payments to low and middle-income families, with children and to Connecticut's working poor. While it's part of one of the largest tax cuts in state history, it also marks the largest election year outpouring of one-time relief, since the governor sent $115 million in tax rebates to Connecticut households as he sought re-election in 1998. The state's administration hopes to send out at least 300,000 child tax credit rebates this year to single parents earn less than $100,000 in 2021, and the two-parent families that earn less than $200,000. Families must file with the State Department of Revenue Services before June 1st and July 31st to receive a credit. The administration said it expects to issue the relief in August. Around the same time, it also expects to distribute $40 million to $45 million among roughly 180,000 working poor households who claim the state's earned income tax credit on the 2021 state tax returns. The state earned income tax credit currently is worth 30% of the federal credit and provides recipients an average benefit of $700. The one-time $300 bump, Lamont and other Democrat-controlled legislature approved for earned income tax credit recipients, effectively raised the state credit temporarily to 42% of the tax benefit. But tax reform advocates have been pushing for years to make permanent a child tax credit and enhance earned income tax credit program. The governor of the city wants to reassess the state's fiscal health after much of the $3 billion in federal crisis relief Connecticut received last year has been exhausted. Over the weekend, buyers paid a $5 a gallon, or roughly $100 to fill the tank, and gas prices have doubled since Biden took office. JP Morgan analysts predict $6 a gallon by August, and experts warn this crisis will continue even after Biden's term ends because he's dismantling fossil fuel production. There are now 20 states plus Washington, D.C. with averages of $5 or above. The highest price states remain California with a state average of $6.42 a gallon. 31% of the nation's 130,000 gas stations were already selling gas for more than $5 a gallon. There are stations and states where gas is cheaper. About 15% of stations nationwide still are selling gas for less than $4.50 a gallon. But even in May, states where gas is cheaper, such as Mississippi, lower average income can mean drivers have to work longer to fill up their tanks. Biden has fighting inflation is his top priority. But when it comes to curbing oil prices, there's little he may be able to do. And Biden announced a plan in March to release up to 180 million barrels from the country's emergency oil reserves. That's spread over 6 months. The unprecedented drawdown is helping, according to analysts, but it hasn't been enough to curb the price gains at the gas pump. And Biden also called on U.S. oil producers to ramp up drilling, while oil producers have faced constraints. Do you think that President Biden is doing all that it takes to help out the American people with stimulus checks, or no? Tell me your thoughts on this.
The chair is pleased to recognize the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Castor, for your 5 minutes to question.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Secretary Becerra. It's great to see you. And I want to thank you and President Biden for successfully lowering healthcare costs and premiums for millions of American families. That is what Democrats in Congress intended through the American Rescue Plan. And now high-quality coverage is more affordable and available to families at a time when they really needed to put money back into their pocket. 14.5 million Americans now rely on the Affordable Care Act. And it has been a particular godsend in my home state of Florida, where we're the third largest state in the country, but we have the highest enrollment of any state, 2.8 million Americans now. That's a 28% increase over last year, largely because we were focused on lowering their costs through those enhanced tax credits. Can you briefly discuss the impact of the American Rescue Plan and what it has meant, what those enhanced tax credits have meant for affordable health care coverage? How many new individuals signed up because of those tax credits, and how many, what's the scope, and what do you predict the future?
Congressman, thank you. By the way, thank you very much for the work you did to make sure that the Affordable Care Act could be there and that we could have the American Rescue Plan to make even better the results of good quality health care available to so many Americans. You mentioned it with the numbers that Americans are speaking with their feet and with their voices and applying for these health care plans. The fact that today 14.5 million Americans can rely on health insurance because of the Affordable Care Act. 6 million of them new to the program altogether. And as you mentioned, several million in Florida by itself, one of 50 states. The fact that we can offer, as a result of your work on the American Rescue Plan, Americans a health insurance plan of quality, not a junk insurance plan, but of quality for $10 or less a month in premiums. You can't.
Thank you all. Please have a seat. Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure to work with you in the United States Senate, and I want to thank you for your grace and your wisdom and your friendship. And yes, we piled into that station wagon going to church. So we have many things in common. So good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I want to thank you, Mike, Kirsten, the whole group for organizing this breakfast. Congressman Connor Lamb, Congressman Tim Walberg, you as well. And of course, it is an honor to be here with these members of Congress, with faith leaders from across our country, and of course, with our president, who is, as we all know, a leader of unending faith. So, over the past 2 years, so many among us have lost loved ones. So many parents have struggled. All of us have had a loss of a sense of normalcy. And the spiritual weight of it all has indeed been great. Our faith has indeed been tested. But it is that same faith, our faith in God, our faith in humanity, and our faith in what is possible. It is that same faith that I know has seen us through, that has helped us to see the light in one another. You know, last March, I paid a visit to a food bank in Nevada, and the families there were waiting for hours at a time in their cars to receive a box of groceries. And when they drive up, the volunteers there would stand there, the driver would pop open the trunk, and the volunteer would put a box of food in the car. And invariably, as the volunteers explained and described it to me,
your consumers are.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in an interview posted today by Punchbowl News, said that Democrats need to improve their messaging when it comes to inflation over the next 3 weeks before the midterms. She calls inflation a global issue and points out, or argues that because unemployment has decreased under Democrats and Biden, that inflation has gone up. And what's your response to the Speaker of the House saying that there is a messaging issue, that message is not getting out to voters right now, as indicated by polling that shows that those who have voters that are concerned about the economy, inflation, are favoring Republicans over Democrats?
So first, let me just say, got to be mindful because of the Hatch Act on when I speak about, I cannot speak. No, I'm going to get there. Give me a second. I have to lay this out, right? It is my prerogative to say I don't want to make sure that I adhere to the Hatch Act, so I got to put that out there. As it relates to messaging, look, we have always been very clear. The president has always been very clear. We understand. I know you were talking about polls and what the American people are feeling. We understand what they're feeling. We understand that they are feeling a bit of a crunch because of cost, because of inflation, and that's why the president is doing what he's doing today. That's why he's making it very clear that he's taking extra actions to bring down the cost, continue to bring down the cost of gasoline. You heard me talk about hearing aids. 30 million Americans are going to see now lower costs in purchasing hearing aids. When you think about the Inflation Reduction Act, it's going to lower costs. When you think about healthcare, when when you think about energy costs, these are actions that this president has taken. These are action that he's taken with congressional Democrats, and we're going to continue to speak to that. But we get it. We get that Americans right now are feeling that pinch. But, you know, the other piece of this, too, is you have congressional Republicans who are doing the opposite. They don't want to give the healthcare cost, they won't bring down healthcare costs. They don't want to bring down energy costs. If anything, they want to increase what Americans are paying with healthcare and with